Last question. We're out of time, but I'm going to give you one more question. During Jim Crow, could your family have existed? You are in an interracial marriage. Your wife is a white conservative activist. Could your family have existed at all during Jim Crow?
No, it could not, Joy, and we all know that. But that's why I am blessed to live in America today as opposed to America during that time. But we cannot ignore the realities of not having fathers in home. That is important for Black people today and all people today as we move forward for a better America.
We are out of time. What I'm grateful for is that we do not live in the Jim Crow era and that fathers do not face the threat of lynching.
I'm very grateful of that.
Perhaps don't bring up Jim Crow when you're trying to make that example. That was just a small part of my interview with Florida Congressman Byron Donalds last night.
Yo, I had a call with a conservative content creator, friend of mine, a couple of weeks ago. This guy will always give me a call anytime my postings on YouTube get low, and they've been very low and sporadic over the past month with crazy work stuff. But anyway, my phone rings. It's this guy. I always answer the phone when he calls, unless I'm already on a work call. Got a couple of YouTube buddies I'm like that with. Almost doesn't matter what I'm doing. I could be with my girl. Oh, I'm sorry, this is JR Wisdom. I got to pick up the phone. But anyway, my man calls. He was like, yo, you okay? What's been going on? And I was like, yo, man, my Black job been killing me. You know what I'm saying? I'm all good, but, you know, I haven't been uploading the stuff that much because, you know, my Black job. I laughed. He laughed. And then he was like, yo, but for real, what's everybody so upset about? Because Trump wanted to make sure Black folks had some jobs. So then I went on to tell him why some people in the community were upset about that comment or they took offense to it. And he was like, wow, I wasn't looking at it like that. He was like, I thought maybe he was, you know, talking about construction or, you know, something like that. He never thought of it to be something offensive. And we had about a 20-minute rabbit hole conversation about that. You know, who all could be offended, what all, you know, DEI, all kinds of stuff like that. And what I want to do is I want to now take this opportunity to do this same thing for my brothers and sisters on the left, for the Dems, for the Democrats. My man Byron Donaldson that you just saw in the clip just now, you know, he's been doing this rounds in support of his party, the Republican Party, Donald Trump. And I have some individuals very close to me in my circle, family and friends, left-leaning individuals, happen to be females. Both of them asked me, they asked me this. How can these Black men support the Republican Party? One of them went on to say they don't even like them, the Republican Party, them being Black men. They don't even like them like that. And one of them was pushing the question on me so hard, almost like I was supposed to now defend Black men that are either A, Republicans, or B, just outright aren't supportive of the Democratic Party. So I followed up with this question. When I was asked it, both of these individuals, separate times, but I asked them both this question. What is the Democratic messaging and policy towards and for men? Just like now, I let the phone be silent for 5 minutes, and then I let them off the hook because they didn't have one. So already men are an afterthought in the Democratic Party, okay? On top of that, almost all things men or masculine or male related has been labeled as toxic within that party. So for men to fit inside that party and really be accepted and feel well inside that party, they have to go out of their way to show how much non-toxic that they are. Okay, so I don't have any messaging. No one's talking to me. No policies directed for me. How I can better get educated and attend college, like the sisterhood. How I can maintain and keep good jobs so I can support my family. That's important to me. This particular block that we're talking about, this particular Black man, follow where I'm going, Democrats. Okay, so no messaging, no policies. I'm toxic. Okay. A lot of people that represent the party will go further to tell me how unnecessary I am. See Cher. You ask Cher, do we need men? She'll say, for what? As she sits in a well-lit room with climate control, as she tweets out that ludicrous answer over the internet, and she goes to the restroom and magically doesn't worry about where her peep and poop goes. Just sit there and say, what do we need men for? No messaging, no policy. I'm toxic. I'm not needed. Now let's focus on the Black man, since that's what this is about. The Democratic Party losing support for Black men. I'm trying to help you understand this as an independent that looks at both sides. Now we're going to home in on the Black man. The Black man sees all these things I just listed with the Democratic Party. But then on top of that, some Black men see the Democratic Party, their messaging, their policies as a direct result as him not being important inside of his home. Over the last few decades, within our community, the Democratic Party has definitely focused on the messaging for the empowerment of our women, but we have been ignored. Our women have been almost given the messaging of get your degrees and the government and take care of the rest. We'll take care of the rest. The man is optional. He's a cool accessory if you have one, but he is not necessary. And a lot of men have been damaged by these sort of policies and messaging more than they have racism, more than they have over policing. So if you have a guy that hasn't experienced over policing, hasn't experienced overt racism on a regular basis, but what he has experienced is being kicked out of his house for a pursuit of a Hollywood Sex in the City happiness over trying to maintain and hold a household together. Because let's be clear, some of the Democratic messaging and policies have directly contributed to our community being manufacturing centers for Pookies, Ray Rays, thugs, drug dealers, and Pookishas. Let's be real about that. Some of these policies have helped us almost make a 5-to-1 clip of Pookies and Ray Rays versus productive Black men and women. That's what that particular voting block, that's what that particular Black man, the one that doesn't want to be a deadbeat, the one that doesn't want to be a statistic, that one that wants to have a family and raise it and nurture it and be the head of it, it sees this party as being opposed to that. That's messaging that you guys have to figure out what to do about. Okay, number two. That's the number one reason was that no messaging, no policies. I'm not important, especially to the Black man. These policies have almost made me obsolete in the house. I'm not important. So I'm just trying to paint this picture. Okay, that's reason number one. Number two, the party is almost seen as being feminine. You're like, what do you mean? Well, the party's policies and messaging seems to almost always exclusively be focused on females and to some extent, the rainbow community. All the letters, I mess them up, so I just rainbow. Not trying to be funny. But most of the policies have been for the advancement of this voting bloc. Okay? The Republican Party, no matter how you feel about it, they seem more masculine. Okay, they've hitched their wagons to guns, God, and grit. Okay, look at how they handle situations as far as policy. If you say something that they don't like and they don't agree with, or you give them information they don't like that's opposed to theirs, they'll tell you fake news, keep trucking. Fake news, keep trucking. What would the Democratic Party do? They will shame you. They will shame you and insult you and show you the need to be right. Shame, insults, and the need to be right. Feminine behavior, feminine characteristics. If you're not following me, you don't believe me, let's check out the trailer again.
Last question, we're out of time, but I'm going to give you one more question. During Jim Crow, could your family have existed? You are in an interracial marriage. Your wife is a white conservative activist. Could your family have existed at all during Jim Crow?
No, it could not, Joy. And we all know that. But that's why I am blessed to live in America today as opposed to America during that time. But we cannot ignore the reality of not having fathers in home. That is important for Black people today and all people today as we move forward for a better America.
We are out of time. What I'm grateful for is that we do not live in the Jim Crow era and that fathers do not face the threat of lynching.
I'm very grateful of that.
Perhaps don't bring up Jim Crow when you're trying to make that example. That was just a small part of my interview with Florida Congressman Byron Donalds last night.
All right. This is what I want to point out right quick. I want to point out a couple of things with this segment. So right off the bat, what do we have here? We've got the shaming and the insults. Because my man has a different opinion, okay? He's not met with whatever his issue was. His issue is with family structure, how the family is today as opposed to yesteryear, right? Did he use a shocking term in order to get attention to it? Would it be something that most people probably wouldn't have used in that context? Yes, we're referring to Jim Crow. But in the context of what he was saying, he didn't say we were better off during Jim Crow. He was just simply stating that the family structure was better, meaning more intact, meaning more important during the Jim Crow era. And of course, what happened, the focus was just on Jim Crow. And so the insults and the shaming starts, sell out. Shining your wife's shoes, aren't you? Because he couldn't shine them if she was a Black queen because he has a white wife. So let's mess with him about that. Okay. Right. This is the comment section, right? Nothing sadder than an outside dog who thinks he's an inside dog. Fed scraps and thankful. Okay. What about the actual issue that he was bringing up? Just want to see what his last comment is down here at the bottom. The last shaming and the insult festival. What's the last one? Oh, there it is. I couldn't see it because of my menu. Oh, Uncle Rufus in suits. Uncle Rufus in suits. So why did I replay that? Why did I want to show that? Because what did I say? I was like, also the party is seen as feminine. Rather than go to the topic, the breadcrumbs that this particular voting block, this Black man that has checked out and put an R on his name, that has an emphasis and an importance on family. There are some Black men out there that their emphasis is on family. They want to be a part of family. They don't want to keep manufacturing these Pookies and Ray Rays at a 4 and 5 to 1 clip. That's important to these people. Instead of picking up that and running with it and seeing what we can do as a party to retweak our messaging and show, yo, we're also about families or whatever, sell out. We're going to call you every uncle, every one of our favorite uncles except Ben. You're going to be Tom. You're going to be Rufus. Uncle Tom, Uncle Rufus. We're not going to pay attention to what you're telling us. Shame, insults, the need to be right, effeminate characteristics for a party. Men are turned off with that. They want guns and glory. They want guns and glory. anytime you say something that's contrary to the left messaging, the shame and insults come. He's your non-favorite raccoon. That's not Rocket. All right. So we have no messaging for men. And then in particular for Black men, you've made them not important in the household, expendable, a nice accessory, don't need it. Okay. One reason, Black men checking out. Number two, party seems effeminate. Shame and insult every time they don't like something. The Republican Party, fake news, move on. Republican Party, God, guns, glory, family. Work on the messaging. But number three, this is where Joe Biden comes in. The Democratic Party is seen and perceived as weak and as losers. Like, what are you talking about? They're seen as weak and losers. Guys want to compete. Guys want to win. Republicans win. I know you've heard of the little engine that could. The Republican Party is the little engine that dominates, the little engine that overachieves. You would literally think that the two parties are 50-50 in this country. They are not. They're not. It's like 47-43, 46-43. The Democrats have the majority. That's why they always win the popular vote in their elections. And the Republicans hardly ever win the popular vote. They almost always win purely just off the Electoral College, never the popular vote. Why? Because they're outnumbered, but yet they dominate. They're winners. Democrats are losers. Well, they just won the 2020 election. And what did they get with that? Fat L's. Lost affirmative action. L. Lost women's rights. L. Two big issues that are important to them, and they lost them. L's. Losers. What do they do about it? Nothing, because they are weak. Perceived as weak. Who wants to get energized like a lot of people did in 2020? We got to stop Donald Trump. We got to stop what the Republicans are going to do to this country. They'll take away women's rights. They'll take away affirmative action. And they did. They did. They did do it. They did do it because they're the little engine that overachieves, the little engine that dominates. And you guys are weak and losers. What'd you do with the courts? As soon as the real, and that's another video, but I'm going to say the real Republican champion, the traditional Republican, Mitch the Grim Reaper McConnell, is the one that really laid down all the W's at the Republicans' feet. And Donald Trump, the pep rally king, is the one that gets all the credit and the adulation within the party. But when he overloaded that Supreme Court, what did the Dems do about it when they won in 2020? Nothing. They didn't want to mess with the number of justices because they worried about what precedent was and what people were going to say and what you think the Republicans would have worried about that? No, they would not. They would have taken the W, but Democrats are weak, and they did not. So let's see what happened right after the debate. Right after the debate, when we got to see the Democratic Party's representative for the 2024 election, that's in 120 days. Let's look at what the streets had to say directly after the debate. Let's see. Let's check it out. On here.
Past 2.5 years, it's not likely to happen. Again, I think as the dust clears on this thing, this campaign has still got 4 months to go. And I think that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee, and I think Donald Trump's going to be the nominee. And the choice is going to be between a guy that fights for people and tries to lift people up and another guy that wants to rip this country apart and pull it up from its roots.
Cool.
Do you think that there should be people around President Biden trying to have candid conversations with him? Because it does seem from all of our reporting that it's him and also Jill Biden who have said, we're not going to back away from this. You know, we played what he had to say in 2022. Those midterm wins, at least the lack of a sweeping red wave in the midterm elections did give Joe Biden a boost. It quieted a lot of this chatter, but it has just exploded. I mean, what does the president need to do to quiet it down?
Well, first of all, he's going to be in North Carolina today. He's going to be campaigning, as you know, and you guys have watched him. He's been campaigning in all of the swing states, and he's going to be out there today. So when the president says to watch me, what the president says is watch me perform.
Oh, God. All right. Next clip. I'm not even going to say anything yet. Going to go to the next clip. It's right after the debate. After you guys all put your guy up there.
CBS News YouGov conducted some polling post-debate. We can compare it to the pre-debate numbers. And the bottom line, Alice, it's not any good. It's not any good. Look at this. Voters who say that Biden has the mental health to be president. It was just 35% pre-debate. Look where it's dropped to now post-debate, 27%. How about that he should be running for president? It was 37% pre-debate. It's now 28%. I have never seen numbers this bad for an incumbent president during my lifetime. I mean, that mental health to be president, just 27%. You might say, okay, you know, that's low, but a lot of people thought Biden was too old back in 2020. These numbers look nothing like this back in 2020. These numbers were bad already. And the truth is, Allison, they have gotten just considerably worse, even in just a few days after that first presidential debate.
Harry, do we have polling yet that suggests that voters want a different candidate?
Yeah, this is the whole question, right? If it's not President Biden, then who could it be on the Democratic side? And the truth is, there are no easy answers. You know, I went back and looked at the polling versus Donald Trump for a bunch of different Democrats have been suggested. Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris. Look at this. They all trail Donald Trump. So the idea here that we're somehow going to get this magic bullet, that there's somehow going to be some Democrat who can beat Donald Trump easily, I just don't see it in the numbers. At this particular point, if Joe Biden takes on Donald Trump, he's trailing. If there's another Democrat who runs against Donald Trump, they too are trailing. Perhaps you want to make the argument you bring in another Democrat who isn't as well known as Joe Biden, who has universal name recognition, and maybe they could change the numbers. But the fact is, any Democrat who entered the race right now, at least among those that are being suggested by a bunch of folks, they would all enter the race at this particular point as an underdog to former President Donald Trump.
But Harry, are those numbers old numbers or are those since the debate? I mean, maybe the conversation has changed.
Yeah, those are not numbers that have been taken since the debate, though I was looking at numbers that were post-debate. This takes into account an average, a long-term average, right? Because the key is I don't just want to rely upon one polling number. But even the limited polling data that we have post-debate suggests that none of those candidates on your screen, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, or Kamala Harris, any of those would be favored over Donald Trump. He leads against all of them, whether you look at the pre-debate numbers or the post-debate numbers. And of course, I like to look at an aggregate of numbers, so that's what I did. But the fact is, even if you just did post-debate, it really wouldn't look any different.
Wow. Okay. Very quickly, this is what I want to hone in on right quick, and then we'll go to the next clip. Okay? I've done all of the super talking I'm going to do. We're just going to watch clips at this point, right? Just want to point this out, though. Post-debate numbers. Mental health to be president. A whopping 27%. 27%, y'all. Wow. Oh, snap. 27%. Okay. Let's pop over here to the other clip. The next clip is this weakness I've seen before. Joe Biden should have never been up for re-election. I think most people had the consensus in 2020 that Joe Biden was supposed to be a stopgap for the Trump presidency. You've been in office for 1,000 years. Okay. You've hung around long enough. You got your presidency. You're the stopgap for 45. You do your 4 years. right off into the sunset. You've made it to the highest office in the land after 1,000 years in Congress. Congratulations. Peace. 2024. What is this guy doing here? This is who the Democrats put up here to represent. In an election, you have to have the judiciary is gone. It is lost. It is gone until I'm in a nursing home. You have to keep getting these 4-year wins. And this is what you put up. Oh, we're going to run it back with Joe Biden. I actually thought they didn't even have many primaries. They did. It was 2 people. It was 2 people. The DNC, the Democrats as a party, didn't say, no, Joe. Back in 2022, we're going to get a whole field of people together, run all of you guys up here and see who's the best, just like we did 4 years ago. We're not just going to piddle up 2 or 3 people. Donald Trump, that is a campaigning war machine that doesn't have supporters. He has followers. He is Magatron. That guy went through a primary. That guy had to dust off Christie, Haley, DeSantis, all of the big names in that party. He had to dust them all off. And he's Magatron. And he went through the process. What the hell happened over here with the weak Democrats? They let an old, entitled, full of hubris Joe Biden march up here for one of the most important elections that they had to have. They let him run up here and be the Crypt Keeper weekend at Bernie's presidential nominee. I've seen this movie before. We've all seen it before. We just didn't pay attention to it. I'm going to show you where you saw this movie before.
So, every time I talk about Justice Ginsburg, I give a talk or I talk about the book, I always get the question, which is, why didn't she retire? And
okay, I'm going to give you the
and I want to hear what your take is on that.
I'm going to give you the quick and dirty answer to that. We now know, I didn't know at the time, that President Obama invited her to the White House in, I think, 2013 or 14, and suggested basically to her that she might want to think about retiring. And she did not do it. You have to remember that at the time, there was still a filibuster of judicial nominees in place. And I think that the reason that she didn't retire then, that there were lots of reasons. One, she was at the top of her game. She was the senior liberal justice, and she was able to make some real differences there because of that. Secondly, she really did think that Hillary Clinton was going to be elected president, and she wanted to give the first woman president the opportunity to replace her. And I think that she thought that whoever did replace her, if she retired and Obama were able to make a nomination, that it would have to be someone that she thought, in order to get through, if that individual could get through, would be sufficiently less liberal than she was, that she didn't want to make the effort. So she was healthy, and she rolled the dice, and she lost by a matter of weeks, but she did lose. And I think in the last months of her life, when I saw her every week, because she came to us for dinner every week, once a week, because it was the only place she could go during the lockdown. I think that she subjected herself to a lot of things in order to try to stay alive.
All right. And that's where I'm going to stop that. Because that last statement was already a contradiction of all of these reasons as to why she didn't retire. She wasn't healthy. You just said when she came over to dinner, she was subjected herself to all of these things to hang in there. You know you're hanging in there. Why the hell would you not dang on retire? Congratulations, Mitch McConnell was able to seize on that entitlement, that hubris, that pride, that self over country. Had a chance to correct it, didn't correct it, didn't mess with the courts. Democrats, because you're weak. Most important election coming up, you let the Crypt Keeper come be your nominee because you're weak. You couldn't tell him, no, Joe. 2 years ago, you couldn't tell him, no, Joe, we're going to go through a very rigorous process to get our nominee for 2024. No, you're too weak to do that. You let it coast to right now, to when we see the debate. And the sad part, that's when we're seeing it. I knew when he was the nominee that there was going to be a loss in November. Now, after this debate, it looks like there's going to be a massacre in November. How are Black men supposed to be excited and energized about that? About this guy that only 27% of the people think he has the mental capacity to be president. That's not a winner. That is not a winner. I do not want to put forth a whole bunch of effort getting behind that. And I know it's an L on the horizon. And you don't care about my family. You don't care about me being a part of a family. You have no messaging for me. I'm toxic. I'm not important. Are you following this, Dems? Are you following this? Because I'm a messenger that doesn't mind getting shot at. I'm an independent. It's a part of the job. But I suggest that you guys start paying attention to these breadcrumbs and stop shaming and insulting every time a Black man says he doesn't like something about the party. Every time the Black man says he has something that is important to him that you guys don't have on the agenda. If you're not going to talk to him and speak to him about what's important to him, then don't shame him. Pay attention to the breadcrumbs that they're dropping off there. Because the thing is, all of these Black men haven't left the party and put R's and I's in front of their name. Some of them still have the D there, but guess what? They're not energized. They're not excited. They've told me the same things I just laid out. I am not saying this stuff for no reason. I'm saying it because I see it and I hear it and I've been told it. There are guys still on the left. I talked to one yesterday. I talk to him every day. He doesn't even know if he's going to vote because it's Biden, because it's this old dude. You don't need people staying at home, whether they still keep a D on their names or not. And my point is, you guys are losing the grip over that's Democrats. That's who my grandmama voted for. That's who my mama voted for. That's who I'm gonna vote for. Y'all are losing that. You're gonna have to give something of substance. And stop being weak losers. But anyway, let's see what the comments are again within the party now. Within the last week or so, 2 weeks after the debate. Did the groundswell wear off a little bit? Let's see. Are they not perceived as much as weak losers? Let's see.
President Biden from within his own Democratic Party to step aside in this race. Now, this afternoon, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries held a Zoom meeting with the ranking members of the committees to kind of feel their temperature, take the temperature about their feelings about the 2024 election before Congress is set to return tomorrow. And sources tell CNN that in that private phone conversation, that the number of lawmakers who wanted to see the president step aside outweighed those who spoke up in support of him staying in this race. CNN has learned about 6 of those Democratic lawmakers said that they believe it is time for the president to leave the 2024 race. That it included lawmakers like Congressman Takano, Congressman Nadler, also Congresswoman Wild of Pennsylvania, a key battleground state. Sources have also told CNN that lawmakers like Congresswoman Maxine Waters, as well as Congressman Bobby Scott, spoke up in support of the president staying in this race. Now, one of the concerns that was expressed in this phone call is the potential that keeping Biden at the top of the Democratic ticket could weigh down other Democrats running in competitive races in the House and Senate. There is a concern about Democrats being unable to win back the House majority if Biden remains at the top of the Democratic ticket. Now, these private calls from these lawmakers join the already other 5 Democratic lawmakers who, since the debate, have called for President Biden to step aside publicly.
All right. Well, let's see what Biden has to say. Let us see what Biden has to say about that. Is this the one where
editorial?
It reads, yeah.
On Monday, Joe Biden killed off any possibility of a graceful exit.
Hurry up, AI.
Joe Biden is going nowhere of his own volition. If the extent to which the president was dug in was not clear over the holiday weekend, the president sure made it clear Monday in a stunner of a letter to congressional Democrats paired with a call-in to MSNBC's Morning Joe, thus firing his cannon of defiance at both the insiders and the Vox Populi, or so he and his defenders hoped. The rhetoric of the letter left no room whatsoever for a graceful departure or change of mind due to evolving personal circumstances. It allowed for no caveats. It suggested nary a hint of doubt in Team Biden's mind. There was some minor sop to having heard concerns, but then the letter illegitimized them and blasted them away, even going so far as to imply said concerns were really about the high stakes in the overall election itself rather than the mental health and aptitude of Biden, which we all know to be the actual reality. I feel a deep obligation to the faith and trust voters have placed in me to run this year.
Dude,
it was their decision to make, Biden wrote, referencing his selection in what passed for a Democratic primary. Not the press, not the pundits, not the big...
I do like how this article said what passed for a Democratic primary. I just said, at first, I didn't even think they had one because it was so lackluster with 2 people.
Donors, not any selected group of individuals, no matter how well-intentioned. The voters, and the voters alone, decide the nominee of the Democratic Party. How can we stand for democracy in our nation if we ignore it in our own party? I cannot do that. I will not do that. So, in Biden land, that's an end to that. If Biden ends up at the conclusion of this crisis not running for re-election as president, it will not be of his own choosing. Given the above verbiage, along with far more besides but entirely of a piece, there will also be no way to spin it otherwise. No way at all. Not after, I will not do that. The problem the Democrats face, of course, and of which Biden makes no mention, is that many Americans with older parents or grandparents suffering from palpable mental decline have been on the other end of such defiant conversations, desperately trying to get a loved one to face up to reality and maybe not get behind the wheel of a car on a given morning, or to move to a more suitable dwelling.
Okay, this is sad and anecdotal, but the left-leaning male friend of mine that I just referenced a little while ago that said he didn't even know if he was going to vote, we literally joked. We're in the metro Atlanta area. Actually, we're both in the north side, Cobb County. We joked that we wouldn't even trust sending President Joe Biden from here to Lenox Mall to pick us up a pair of jeans and come back with no Secret Service, just the keys to our car and the GPS. Here in the ATL, lovely traffic. Giant ass Lenox Mall. Go, Joe. We don't trust him to do that. This is what this lady's talking about. When it's that time that stage in life, and even in day-to-day situations, people can't get loved ones sometimes to do things that's going to be in their best interest, that's going to be in the best safety for themselves and other people. This is the same thing that we got going on right here, except only the country's at stake. Come on, Joe. But see, it's not on him. This still keeps going back to the weak Democrats. The weak Democrats, the Republican Party would have never allowed this to happen.
They've heard a stern "I will not do that" in their own lives, and it has caused them stress and worry. This is not a matter of age, but of health. Biden has stated repeatedly that those pressuring him not to run represent the elite and that ordinary Democratic voters are unwavering.
Okay. All right. That's first of all, with the AI rendering, I think I'll read it myself next time. I was being lazy. But anyway, okay, Joe, you ain't going nowhere like Diddy. We ain't going nowhere. He ain't. All right. Don't go anywhere because your pride, because of your hubris, because of your entitlement. You think you're entitled to 2 terms. Fine. You're entitled to 2 terms. You're entitled to 2 terms, sir. Let's see what old Axelrod has to say about this situation. Perhaps you remember Axelrod, advisor in the Obama administration, because you were there for 8 years. Let's see what he has to say about you still running for the president in 120 days.
Seems to me I have a choice. I have to choose between running for president and doing my job, keep the Supreme Court from moving in a direction that I believe to be truly harmful.
Yeah, that didn't age well.
So that was then Senator Joe Biden dropping out of his first bid for the White House nearly 4 decades ago. And now Biden finds himself in a new moment that could define his legacy. And joining us now to discuss the latest developments this weekend is CNN senior political commentator and former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. David, nice to see you. So right after President Biden's interview aired Friday, you posted on X that he is dangerously out of touch. Why do you say that?
Well, because listening to the interview, he seemed to deny where he is in the race. He seems not to grasp what is the big concern that people have. You know, let me just say about the president, Pam, that his whole life he has overcome tremendous loss and tremendous odds. I mean, you know, his personal loss is well known, extraordinary and horrible, and he's fought his way back from that. He's fought his way back from political defeats and against the odds. And so his psyche is that he can beat anybody and any long odds. What he can't beat is Father Time, and that's really the concern here. It's not about his record. Every time he's asked about whether he can do the job until he's closer to 90 than 80, he says, well, look at what I did the last 4 years. That's just not the way it works. Donald Trump is a almost unprecedentedly a flawed candidate in so many ways, and represents, I do believe, as the president says, a real danger to democracy. But the one person that no one can outrun is Father Time. You know, Tom Brady won a Super Bowl 3 years ago, and he's out of football. Okay, why? Doesn't detract from his greatness or what he's done. It's just there are certain immutable facts of life, and those were painfully obvious on that debate stage. And the president just doesn't seem to he hasn't come to grips with it. He's not winning this race. It's more likely, if you just look at the data and talk to people around the country, political people around the country, it's more likely that he'll lose by a landslide than win narrowly this race. And if the stakes are as large as he says, and I believe they are, then he really needs to consider what the right thing to do here is.
It's interesting because you mentioned, the fact that there's nothing you can do about age. It only goes in one direction, right? And what this comes down to is public perception as well. And a lot of people bring up, well, Trump is only a few years behind Biden. But when you look at the public perception in the polls, 42% of those polled said that Trump would be too old for office. 74% said that about Biden. And you have to wonder, we played that clip of when Joe Biden, when he was, then senator, dropped out of the presidential race in 1987. I was speaking to Evan Osnos, that Biden biographer, recently, and he said, he was pushed out of politics then. He's not going to be pushed out of politics again. Yes. That is one of the driving factors here of why he's digging in his heels. Is that how you see it as well? What else do you think is at play here with what you think is sort of a state of denial?
He should not view it as being pushed out of politics. Look, Pam, I really have a very high regard for Joe Biden. I served with him in the White House. I thought he was a great vice president. I was glad every day that he was there. He was an important voice in the Obama administration. I think he's done some historically important things, and history will be much kinder to him than voters are being right now. But the question is, what will his reputation be like? What will his legacy be if he persists in this race and loses badly, which is really possible at this point? We elect presidents by the Electoral College. I know there are some polls that speak otherwise, but I've looked at a ton of data, and no one in those states who is knowledgeable would say he's ahead in any of the battleground states. But now you have states like Virginia, Minnesota, Maine. The governors of New Mexico and Maine reportedly told him in that meeting last week that they're not sure he can carry their states, which were presumed to be in his column. So he could lose and take the House and the Senate with him. That's not the legacy that he wants. He has a great record and a great history. So I think if that's what he's thinking, he's looking at this the wrong way. The only thing that's pushing him out of politics is the immutable march of time.
So he was asked by George Stephanopoulos about this prospect of, what if you lose to Trump? And here's what he said. Let's listen.
And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do.
What?
That's what this is about.
What?
In this moment we're in right now, do you think Biden is putting country above self?
Yeah, well, this is not what this moment is about. This moment is about exactly what he has described. Donald Trump doesn't believe in rules or laws or norms or institutions. He's already shown that he's willing to flout even the most sacred laws, the most sacred norms of our democracy by trying to overturn a free and fair election. So there's more at stake than whether or not Joe Biden feels at the end of the day that he gave it his all. If his all is not enough, maybe someone else can give more because they have more energy and they have a longer runway in the future.
All right, David Axelrod, thanks for sharing some of your time with us on this Sunday morning. Great to see you.
Man, I know you guys see where this is going. Okay. Again, this is one of those, I'm just trying to, in this particular instance, give my brothers and sisters on the left something to focus on to stop the hemorrhaging of male, and more specifically, Black male engagement with the party. They're leaving, and the ones that haven't left, they're not energized. There's no, number one, there's no message or policy for them. They're made to be felt unimportant, toxic, and in the Black man's instant, even pushed out of the home for various reasons with said policies and messaging. Number two, party is seen as feminine and effeminate. When they don't like, when you have a difference in opinion with what they say, they want to shame you, insult you, give you the need to be right instead of just saying fake news and keep on trucking. That's masculine. That's guns and grit and glory. Okay. Then number 3, you're perceived as weak and as losers. Stop being weak. Stop losing. You have 4 years. 2 years ago, all of these now Democratic people that are speaking out, you guys had access to Joe the entire time. You saw what most of the American people just got to see during the debate. You've been seeing it this entire time. You knew you should have taken the keys. You didn't do it because you guys are weak. Didn't do it to Ruthie, RBG, because you're weak and it's costing you major L's. Guys don't want to be a part of that. Guys don't want to roll up their sleeves and do all this work to keep getting handed L's over and over again and have no policies for them. All right, but last clip, as far as, what the current landscape is saying about the Democratic nominee. And by the way, we just heard from a lifelong Democratic advisor. We're going to go to another Democrat. You're not going to know this person, but he's a Democrat.
About those 8 White House visits by the Parkinson's expert. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Tom Pitts. He's a quadruple board certified neurologist. He sees patients with Parkinson's all the time. He diagnoses it. I want to be completely transparent here. You've never examined President Biden. From my knowledge, you've never even spoken yet to President Biden.
Been in the same room as
and we're just going to use what we have so far, which is what we've seen, the president's interviews, and the information coming out of the White House. So my first question to you is, as somebody who's a neurologist, what you've seen from the president over the last 2 years, what you saw at the debate, the last few interviews, the way he speaks, the way maybe he walks, have you noticed anything that gives you a red flag as a doctor?
Oh, yeah. I see him 20 times a day in clinic. I mean, it's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part of that, too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up lordotically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of end block turning. It's not a quick turn. That's one of the hallmarks of Parkinson's is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold, hypophonia. A small monotone voice like this over time is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
Here are some of the symptoms from Parkinson's. We just had him up there on the screen. If we can put him back. What about the movement? Some people have pointed out the way he walks. Sometimes it's not very fast, small steps. Is that something that is common in people who are battling a disease like Parkinson's?
Yeah, it's a hallmark. Shuffling gait, we call that, so little steps. Loss of arm swing from the rigidity. When we walk, we have a nice cadence. You notice he doesn't really swing his arms. And end block turning, meaning he kind of pivots around his foot. If you said, hey, President Biden, he wouldn't go like this. So, yeah.
But I also know, and tell me if I'm wrong here, it's very hard to diagnose Parkinson's, isn't it? It's not simple. I mean, I've heard that it can be.
It's one of the easier movement disorders to diagnose, actually.
Right,
but it's so clinic. There's very little other. And I'm a Democrat. I always say about this.
Right.
It's just like, this guy is not a hard case.
But I've had relatives who have gone through neurological issues, and I've heard that sometimes Parkinson's is not very easy to nail. You have to take a lot of tests.
It's early on. If you're just presented with like hallucinations, that could be a variety of things, or just the cognitive problems. That could be Alzheimer's versus Parkinsonism, and that becomes a little nebulous. But once you start manifesting the hallmark motor symptoms,
right?
Slow movement, rigidity, mass facies, hypophonia. I mean, if a med student did not pick Parkinson's on the test, they'd be remediated.
So let me ask you, if you had, and I know you have no idea what happened in the White House, but a neurologist coming 8 times in 8 months, does that tell you anything? Is that, I mean, I know you're just sort of speculating here, but does that tell you anything or no?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're like the best of friends or something, but that's a very specific, he's a movement disorder. That's a subspecialist in exactly what he has. And there's very few young people, like a Marine Guard. Most people would be med boarded out for any type of movement disorder at a young age. Like if you had Huntington's chorea, early onset Parkinson's, dystonia, bad essential tremor, you're usually med boarded out. So I highly doubt there's.
What does that mean, med boarded out?
Med boarded mean the military would not let you, if you have seizures, for example, you cannot usually be in the military. That is, you are
so
medical
you're saying you don't necessarily believe, and they're not saying this, but they said there's thousands of military members that go to the White House that are treated there for health reasons.
Yeah.
You're not buying that that's a random military person.
No, that would be very odd to just see a random movement disorder case at the White House, especially a young guard. There aren't many young people that have movement disorders that could be in the military.
And then, a lot of people have called for a cognitive test. What exactly would that entail? What does that mean?
Now, that's the key, because word finding retrieval doesn't necessarily mean you don't know what you want to say. What I cannot comment on is his ability to make good decisions. His motor symptoms are degenerating. He has Parkinsonism. That is a fact. He has degeneration of the brain. Show me the MRI. Show me he doesn't. Put your money where your mouth is. He definitely has it. But the problem is, when you look at his situation, you can't say, oh, I know for a fact that because he didn't retrieve the word, he didn't know what he wanted to say. And that's why both him and Trump should take the 4-hour neuropsychological testing, which is the hallmark test for cognitive performance.
What do you do in this test?
A lot of things. So, for example, they may have you say as many words as you can in a minute that start with F. Block building, retrieval. I may say cup and have you recall it 3 minutes later. Trail drawing. These are done with a professional, PhD in neuropsychology. Has nothing to do with psychiatry. And we can tell if you have vascular.
It's 4 hours long?
4 hours. It's a full day. We tell people bring a snack. It is a full day. And so not the MOCA, which was a bedside test that President Trump took. These are tests that are screening tests. They don't rule in, if you do great.
There's no way to sort of lie in this test, to sort of ace it even though you're sick.
No way. This one it will come out in the wash. For example, if I do the bedside exam to an accountant and I ask them, what's 100 minus 7? Even the worst neurodegenerative patient, if they worked at a high education level or something like that, is going to get that right. But in the 4-hour test, it will come out.
Finally, you said you're a Democrat, you're a doctor. You sound like you're frustrated with what the White House is saying.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because, I'm an American before everything. And I look at it and say, when I used to see Russia, Soviet Union, North Korea, when they just make outrageous things, like when North Korea can't keep the lights on and they say, oh, it was some faulty power thing. I kind of hate that kind of stuff. They had 4 years, my own party had 4 years to find, this was a wreck in slow motion. And they had 4 years to find, out of 350 Americans, one person that could take the place. And here we are the day before school trying to do the homework and replace a guy who's got a neurodegenerative disease.
Dr. Pitts, we thank you for joining Top Story. And again, I know you've never examined President Biden. I want to say that you've never spoken to President Biden, but you're going off what you've seen on television and interviews and all of your expertise. Yeah. Doctor, we appreciate that.
Thanks for.
Yep. Thanks for watching. Bro, I didn't even see all of that clip because it was a little bit on the long side. And so I was doing other things, i.e. working my day job. He just hit the nail on the head. What I was bringing home with this whole week thing. He said my party had 4 years to prepare for this. And we're at the 11th hour. And now House Democrats, and now some some Senate Democrats, and Democratic governors and whatnot around the country now, 120 days away from the election. Now they want to tell Joe no. Weak. So that's the video for today. If you did enjoy it, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing. Please be like LL, lick them lips, and rock the bell so you'll be notified the next time your boy comes online for another episode of the Independent Mail. I appreciate you guys. And Dems, please pay attention to these breadcrumbs. And do away with all of the shaming and the insults and the need to be right. Get some messaging for men. You need us. Policy for men. You need us. Everything we do isn't toxic. Okay, we keep the infrastructure together. We keep the lights on. You don't have to worry about where the poop goes. The internet is fast. Okay, we're important in the house. We don't want to keep making these dang on Pookie and Ray Ray factories. We don't. Some of us do not want to do that. Speak to us. Okay, let the party have some masculinity about it. And stop being weak. Until next time, guys, peace and stay informed.